there were these seeds that were already planted before your near-death experience, but didn't have a chance to blossom until afterwards, as if you were set up.
And I thought, I'm going to die. I didn't think I was going to pull this free. And the train was about to pull out the station. My coat was still stuck inside the doors itself. On that particular day, there was something bigger than me saved me. I went from the pain that I was in, and I was suddenly in another place altogether. I was no longer laid on the hospital trolley, but I was on like this huge kind of like a slate rock. I opened my eyes, and there were two female forms either side of me. It was like all the years of pain was slowly being peeled off one by one. And I thought, how am I going to tell the world about this? So I thought, I'm going to do a painting. As soon as I started painting, it wasn't just me that was creating these paintings. I was being helped by my guides and my angels.
Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever felt lost, uncertain, or have no idea which way to turn, then do we have the Divine Light Shine On show for you. Today I'll be talking with David Ditchfield, near-death survivor, musician, symphony composer, and author of a brilliant book on his near-death experience, Shine On, and a pull he experienced when he returned. And that's just what I want to talk with him about today, about near-death experiences, the divine light, and divine pull for something greater that's inside each and every one of us. That, plus we'll talk about orbs, lights, and waterfalls, Mac G4s and symphonies, mediums and violins, white doves and concerts, Indiana Jones and 13 Seconds, and what in the world Gustav Mahler and Jimi Hendrix have to do with anything. So welcome to the show, my brother. Are you ready to shine?
Hey, Michael, what a lovely introduction. Thank you. Yeah, I am indeed.
Well, thank you so much for being here, and a mighty woohoo! So
Right back to you.
I feel like there's a kindred connection. Particularly, I've read your book. I've gone through some videos. I've been on your website. I'm going to recommend everybody get your book. So I may know you in a sense better than you know me, but there's a reason that I'm saying welcome to the show, my brother. There's this connection of where we've gone, of what we've been through. So I'm going to ask some pretty deep questions and dive right into it with you. First off, looking back on everything, do you feel life is a cosmic setup?
Yes, totally. One of the biggest things that I brought back with me from my experience was that we're all part of the universe itself. We're all very much. The universe is constantly moving forward. And so are we. And we go through our lives not really experiencing that enough. We kind of look up at the sky only occasionally and see the stars sparkling, but we don't realize that just like the whole of the animal kingdom, nature itself, we're all part of that huge entity. Yeah.
And it's interesting. So you're gonna have to go to the middle of the interview, everybody. And I wouldn't fast forward, but hang in there to understand what happened with you in music. But it seems like there were these inklings, there were these moments, like you had this dream of making music, playing the guitar, traveling around the world, seeds that were already planted before your near-death experience, but didn't have a chance to blossom until afterwards, as if you were set up.
Yeah, that's very true. I think I was always like a square peg in a round hole in my life before, because I'd left school without qualifications. So for me, it was like a struggle to try and get by and make a living. So most of my life was made up of manual laboring, working on construction sites and stuff like that, which I was never very good at that kind of thing. So for me to be able to fulfill my dreams creatively, that was very hard to do because most of my time was spent, just like most of us, trying to earn a living. And so I wasn't really part of that world. I aspired to it. I was living in London, and a lot of the guys that I got to know as friends were already successful working in that industry, and I thought, wow, it looks great. All their stories sound fantastic. So I very much wanted to be part of it, but I didn't think that would actually ever happen to me. And I didn't think I'd get to the stage where I'm at now.
Well, it's interesting because you talk about how in London there is still not a caste system. That's more of India, but the disparity between classes. And
Yeah.
and there was probably something inside of you that said, that's for the other guy, for the other bloke, not for me.
That's exactly it. Yeah, that's what it's like. The UK itself is still very antiquated. We've still got the class system which exists, and so it's very hard to sort of really downplay that. Because and there's that sense of there are a lot of people working in that industry, in the music industry itself, or the entertainment industry. It's a very middle class thing, as we call it. It's very highly educated people who tend to get that kind of work. So it's a kind of like a brotherhood. So one person gets a job, and then they know someone else who they went to public school with, and then they get the job as well. So coming from my background, which is very working class, it was very hard, to ever really sort of be part of that network.
So then let's go to, forgive me, I don't know how to put it, and I'll hold up my hand here with the most recent thing where I was kind of split open in a sense. Let's go to a day that, in my words, not necessarily yours, I'm going to call a special and sacred gift.
Yeah. Absolutely, totally.
Would you mind taking us through that day and then through 13 very sacred seconds?
Of course, yeah, I will do. Yeah. What was happening was I got to the stage where I'd run out of money altogether, and so I was about to lose my apartment. So I went to stay with my sister and her family, who live in Cambridge. I'd met this friend in London who I connected with very well, and she'd come to stay for a couple of days. So I was seeing her off at the rail station. She got to get back to London. So I was helping her with her bags onto the car, saying goodbye, and we gave each other a hug and a kiss to say goodbye. And as I stepped back, my coat got trapped in the closing doors, the automatic closing doors of the train. And next thing I knew, I was staring my friend Anna in the eyes, and I thought, this is it. I'm going to die. I didn't think I was going to pull this free. And the engines were starting to rev up, and the train was about to pull out the station. And as it did, it pulled out at tremendous speed. And my coat was still stuck inside the doors itself. And it's a lot of people say to me, "Oh, why didn't you take your coat off?" But it was like a very thick sort of sheepskin coat, and I knew that the sleeves would not allow that to happen. So I had no option other than just to pray for life that that I was going to survive this.
If you don't mind me asking just a real brief question, have you looked into the spiritual significance of sheepskin?
No,
because I did that today, and I had a feeling that you hadn't. So
Okay.
sheepskin has been used since the time of the Bible, even before in the time of India and in Sanskrit, as a material that you sit on that brings you closer to spirit, that brings you closer to God. There's also a lot of reference in New Testament of sheepskin and sacrifice to bring you closer to God. So when you said you were stuck with your sheepskin jacket on, and I'm reading that, I'm going, ooga booga.
That's amazing.
Because there was a
Thank you.
reason behind that.
Yeah, that's interesting because I remember thinking as well that sheepskin jacket actually saved me, even though it got trapped in the doors and there was no way it was going to pull free because of the thickness of it. I know that it actually saved me a lot. I could have been come off a lot worse than what I did physically, and so yeah, what happened was, you say 13 and a half seconds. That's how long it took, because the rail police did a massive inquiry on the whole accident, and they said it took from the point of the train pulling off and me going under that long. It felt more like minutes. It felt like I got time to actually think it all through and decide what I was going to do to try and save my life.
Time slowed down.
Time slowed down. It wasn't slow motion. It stretched. It's like I saw this. There's this guy called Dr. David Eagleman, who's a US brain guy, and he was on the BBC over here talking, and he said that this happens to people when they're at a near death sort of point. Yeah, you know about it. So he talked about rock climbers who are about to fall off rocks where they've slipped, and he said that it's like going from looking from a small video sort of image of the world to a huge multiplex sort of 35 millimeter sort of camera, and you take everything in. And I had time to do all that, and I decided how I was going to survive this was to relax my body I'd seen a news item where a small child had been thrown from an apartment block that was burning, and that child had survived without any injuries. And they put that down to the fact that infants don't tense up like we do as adults. So I thought, relax. So I relaxed my body. So as the train started
Sorry,
pulling off,
I'm just going to keep jumping in here.
please do,
And for
yeah.
everybody, please forgive me. This is too powerful. You had the time to think, relax your body. Do you think guides or somebody whispered in your ear? How did the idea to relax your body come to you at a moment when we would normally be in complete and total fight or flight?
Exactly, exactly. I mean, you have to remember at that point in my life, I was not spiritual. I had nothing like that in my thoughts. So I didn't actually think, right, I'm connecting with my guides or anything. All I knew was that I got this thought process, and I thought, right, relax your body. And but looking back on it now, I know that on that particular day, there was something bigger than me saved me. There was a power animal that I learnt later from a medium that was there that saved me from that huge beast. Because one thing I do remember was that the train itself seemed to become like this huge mechanical beast that I was determined to fight, almost like David and Goliath, you know. And I thought, I'm not going to let it beat me. So yeah, so something was there helping me along that day. So as I got dragged along the platform, you know, I heard every gear change, and I just felt the shift and the sheer pull of that train. And I thought, right, here we go. And I remember getting sucked between the edge of the platform and the speeding train itself, and I went down. And that was a very dramatic moment because I heard this tremendous rip, and it's almost like I looked up, and it's like the sides of the car seemed to disappear into the sky, and down I went into this dark, oily pit, and I was like thrown around relentlessly, like being thrown into a washing machine at full spin. You know, I was fully conscious, and I remember it was very violent. It was very painful, very very terrifying. But I still remained calm. And then suddenly I was thrown in between the actual track as the train continued on. It was a very long train, and as you quoted earlier, you said Indiana Jones. That was
Yeah.
my Indiana Jones moment where I still had time to think. I thought, it's not over yet. You know, part of the undercarriage could just whack me over the back of the head, and that would be it. So I kept my head down. I thought, think of Indiana Jones, think of 007, all the movies that I'd seen. And there I was with my face in the oily gravel. And then the train moved on. Then off it went down the track. And it was like a moment of like, wow, what was that? You know, and I remember first thing I noticed was looking up at the sky, and it was a February day, and there was a cold day, and there was not a cloud in the sky, and I just saw this beautiful blue sky, and I just felt this connection with nature that was very powerful at that moment in time, you know. And I also, the pain was immense, and it suddenly became stronger because I think once the train had moved on, the pain suddenly came rushing through me, and I realised that this sheepskin coat was now shredded. It was like completely cut up, and I looked, and my left arm had been severed from the elbow down, and you know, so it was badly cut. And even at that point, you know, I just kind of remember seeing all the insides of my arm, and rather than going into shock or panic, I remember actually thinking, wow, that's the insides of my arm. That's all the workings, all the nerve endings. And I remember being fascinated by that, and at that moment.
If you're a shaman, you are faced with, and I had this experience as well. I was put on a conveyor belt for an ayahuasca journey. And at the end of the conveyor belt were the steel teeth of a serpent. It's like stainless steel of a train coming down about to dismember me. And that is the journey of the shaman, of a dismembering and being reborn. So I'm very curious, what was the animal that the train was? What was the animal that rescued you? And what was going on? And then we'll get to
Yes.
your rescue and the hospital and the journey.
Okay. So yeah, well, I went to, after all this happened, I was very fascinated to find out more about it, you know, because I knew nothing about near-death experiences. I knew nothing about spirituality, and I came across this spiritualist church in the small town in Cambridge where I was recovering. and they were really helpful. They knew all about it. They told me what had happened, uh, and there was a medium that who I'd seen. This is going back 2 months prior to the actual accident itself. This is by pure chance that I come across this medium, and I'd gone. I was fascinated. I was on a train journey. I bumped into an elderly couple, and they were going. And the lady was very keen to give me this flyer to say, "Look, we're off to see a medium. You should come. She's great. Nobody knows who she is, but she's brilliant." So I went along. Now this is 2 months prior to the accident, as I say, and this medium turned around to me at this meeting and said, "The man in the blue sweater, your life is about to change." And I went, "Really? I don't know what way." So I thought, great, the lottery, the relationship I was chasing for. And she walked around, she was like talking to me. She would go, "Yes, yes, I know, I know." And then she turned around and she said, "They're not telling me. They're just saying be ready for it. Be very ready for it, and you'll be protected." And that's all she said. So I knew that something was behind all this. So I was determined to try and find this medium again, and I did. I eventually tracked her down through the church, and when I met her, she said, "I'd like to give you a reading, a personal reading." I said, "That'd be great." So she did do, and she said, "I'm not going to charge you for this, but I really want to do this for free." I said, "Great." So she did, and as soon as I walked in, she said, before we even start, she said, "You're surrounded by cats, and they're all kind of brushing against."
No
then
wonder.
yeah, and she described them all, and they were all different cats from my life, the different colours of coats. But she said, "But the most important thing that you should know is that you've got a lioness, which is stood right at your side, and that is guiding you, and that is your power animal. That is this is it." And this a lioness. I can't tell you how many times it's come into my life now, and it's featured so strongly. So yeah. And I was told by another lady as well, an elderly lady who at the church who'd retired as a medium, and she just sat down. She said, I'd seen your accident on the news," and she said, "You were saved by a power animal that day." And I was going, "Please tell me more." So she said, "Yeah." She said, "There's no way you could have survived anything like that without a power animal coming in to, basically take control of the whole situation." So yeah.
Have you gone? I teach a methodology. I'd love to invite you and help teach you, bring you to one of our classes. Um, I teach a methodology to connecting with our power animals or connecting with our guardian angels. Have you reached out to connect with your power animal?
Not really with the power animal, but I reached out to connect with my guides, with that I met on the other side. They're constantly, to be honest with you. They are there, and they make themselves present, and yeah, they're very much with me.
I had an experience years ago doing a recording. My wife was filming me. We were living in Colorado, near Aspen, Colorado. And she's recording me, and there's kind of a window behind me with the mountains and stuff. And all of a sudden, her jaw hits the floor, and I think she's yawning. And I'm continuing trying to do my recording, and then I give up. I'm like, "Why are you yawning, or why's your jaw hit the floor?" And she's like, "A lion, a mountain lion, had just jumped up behind us." And she
Well,
showed it to me on video.
mm,
And it turns out that was my spirit animal, my guardian angel.
mm,
His name is Maximilian, and he's a lion.
mm,
And so
fantastic.
he had
Yeah.
brought forth the lion that day to show me that he is by my side, just
Mm,
as your lioness is by your side.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's it.
So let's go back there. You're laying down in the oil miraculously. Well, we know these things all happen for a reason.
Hmm.
Your lioness has done her job. You don't know it yet. What happened from there?
Well, the paramedics arrived really quick. Actually, they were there within minutes, and they got me off this track and onto the platform and into the ambulance. And I remember the doctor saying, "Look, there's a hospital around the corner that we've just come from, but you really need to go to one that's about a 25-minute drive. Can you hang on?" I said, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's go." So we screamed off down the highway with the sirens going. And when we arrived at the hospital, there was a team of medics and all sorts waiting for me there, this big semicircle. I thought this looks pretty serious. And it sounded serious. I was still not convinced that this was all over. I was losing a lot of blood by this stage. And they sounded very frightened. I didn't understand. It was all physics, science that was going over my head. But I thought they don't sound too pleased with all this. And my family had arrived. They were there at the hospital, so it all seemed pretty kind of surreal. I thought, well, how did they get here? But anyway, they were there, and my mother was in tears. I remember, and she was leaning over me, and I remember saying to her, I was going, "Mom, I'm so sorry. It's always me bringing the dramas to this family because it was. My life was just a complete chaotic mess before, and she was just putting her hand on my mouth saying, don't, it's not your fault, which of course it wasn't my fault. So, yeah, so as my family were there, I remember seeing Anna, she was there, and I just wanted to speak to her. I had to connect with her because she'd watched the whole thing unfold, and I wanted to check she was okay. So we spoke together, and she was just like going, I can't believe you're alive. I saw you go under. And funnily enough, she said to me, she said, the strangest thing is, I ran through the carriage, and when I looked through the window, you rolled under the train with such grace. And I said, I know. I was just completely, there you go. Not only was I relaxing, but I was obviously being helped under by my power animal to save this. If she wouldn't have seen it, she wouldn't have not have seen such a pretty picture, if you like, if I hadn't been connected and saved that day. So yeah. Anyway, it was pretty much at this point that I left the hospital. I went from the pain that I was in, and I was suddenly in another place altogether. I was in what appeared to be like a darkened space, but not a foreboding darkness. It was like a comforting one. And I remember looking around just to try and get my bearings, and I thought, where am I? And I figured that I had actually died because I thought I was getting, it wasn't looking too good. It was 50-50. And I didn't resist it or fight it. I know that some people do. I've since done a lot of research into NDEs, and some people have got too much to live for and they want to come back. I didn't want to die, but I was quite happy to be in this space and explore it, if you like. And I looked, and there were these beautiful orbs of colours that was like slowly pulsating all around me. It was like lights on, at an airport, sort of, on a runway, and they were like greeting me. And I just thought, this is really soothing and beautiful. And I laid my head back, and I suddenly realised I was no longer laid on the hospital trolley, but I was on like this huge kind of like rock. It was like a slate rock, and normally that would be very uncomfortable to lay out on, but in this case it was not. It felt really comfortable to lay on. So I just lay back on this rock and closed my eyes, and as I closed my eyes I could sense that there was like light coming through. So I opened my eyes, and there was three grids, symmetrical grids of light closing in on me above, and I looked into this light, and I couldn't take my gaze away because it was so pure, and I felt that there was a healing energy coming from the light. I felt like it was like healing the whole of my body, what it had just been through, the trauma, the whole shake-up that it had just had, And I thought, this is amazing. This is a lovely feeling. And so I just kind of lay back and bathed in this light. And as time went on, I suddenly felt the presence of somebody had arrived. Somebody had walked into the situation. So I lifted my head and I looked up, and there was this, what I describe as being a being of light, a person that was like glowing from within. This person was just wearing like a very contemporary black t-shirt, very similar to what I've got on now. Nothing too ethereal, just simple black t-shirt, and this kind of lovely white sort of blonde curly hair, wavy hair. But I knew this person. I thought, I know you. I actually said, I know you, don't I? But where do I know you from? And this person just kept smiling back at me. It was a very androgynous person as well. There was neither male nor female in gender. And so he or she just kind of smiled at me knowingly. But I felt protected. I thought, this person is good. This person's looking out for me. So I felt comfortable enough to lay back and just kind of bathe in this light a little longer. Then I felt the presence of more people had arrived at the scene. You know when someone's walked into a room, don't you, if you've got your eyes closed? So I opened my eyes, and there were two female forms either side of me. The girl to my right had long brown hair and wearing, again, just a simple brown dress. Whereas the girl to my left was more sort of American Indian or Asian Indian or maybe Brazilian. I couldn't work it out, but she was wearing like a more traditional dress. It was like this lovely kind of like sort of like an off-white color, and and they both had their hands just hovering over my body, just slowly just going over every contour of my body. And the energy that was coming from their hands was so strong and intense, but very comforting. I felt it was an energy of love. It was like unconditional love that was just slowly going over the whole of my body. And I just felt comforted by this. I just felt this is amazing. I felt like they weren't only just healing what I'd just been through, the whole accident. That it wasn't just my body that was being healed. It was like all the years of pain and distress that my soul had been through, like all of us have, was slowly being peeled off one by one. All those layers were just disappearing, and all the feelings of guilt or shame had gone.
I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I want to bookmark that and come back to it, because when you come back, I think there's a lot of healing work that was done that allowed you to feel the pull. Today's theme is this pull that we all feel, but you were fortunate enough on the other side to have a lot of these layers peeled away so that you could start to lean into that pull rather than run the other direction or block it out or medicate it out. From there, can you share with us about the light?
Yeah, I can do. This was the most profound moment of the whole experience. Was I felt this energy of love that was coming from their hands and that was coming from those lights above me as well. It suddenly turned up like a huge dial. I felt like every sort of molecule of my body, as I describe it, was vibrating with this energy of unconditional love, And I thought, wow, what's happened now, So I lifted my head again, and just about ahead of my feet was this huge tunnel of white light that was coming in towards me. And by now, I realized that I wasn't just in a small dark space. I was actually in the universe itself, So it was coming through the universe, through all these stars, and it was surrounded by all these dramatic flames that were slowly circulating around this pure white light. And it was so awe-inspiring. And normally, it would be quite frightening, but in this case, I had no sense of fear whatsoever, only excitement. And I just thought, and I knew at this point that what I was looking at and what I was experiencing and feeling was the source of all creation. This is God, not the God that I always figured God would look like, that we all tend to look at in some kind of human form, whatever our faith. There's normally a human attachment, but no, this was it. This was this huge tunnel of white light with all these dramatic flames that was giving me all this love. This was God. This is it. Yeah.
That's why you say in your book that the Sistine Chapel, the artist had it wrong.
Yeah, as much as I love, Michelangelo's work, which is absolutely beautiful and brilliant, it wasn't the guy on top of the Sistine Chapel.
It's the light.
It's the light, yeah.
So then, how did you find yourself coming back? I'll put that in quotes, coming back to Earth. What did that feel like, and what were you thinking at that point?
Well, it's interesting because most people say to me, "Oh, you must have been really disappointed coming back," because it wasn't my choice to come back. The choice was made for me, and of course, it felt like it was all the pain came rushing back. And I remember the overkill of the hospital, the light, the noise was just kind of like too much to deal with. But I have to say that I was just so filled with all this incredible energy that I'd just been through that it was still with me, and I still felt like I was connected to the other realm, like an umbilical cord was connecting me. So I was just excited. I just couldn't wait to tell everybody what had happened. And I remember Anna was stood right next to me, and I said, "Anna, I've got something amazing to tell you. This is really important." She was going, "David, not now, not now." They were about to wheel me into surgery to start work on me, and she said, "Tell me later." I said, "Okay." But, so there was a mixture of obviously dealing with the actual pain and the trauma that I'd come back into, but ultimately I was still very excited, and all I could think of was, why have they sent me back? What is my purpose? What is my mission? I just felt like I got a mission and something to fulfill, to give back to what they just shown me. Yeah.
Why do you think they brought you back?
Well, I think for that reason, I think to share what had happened, and to give people faith, that life continues on, that the soul continues, that it's not the end. And I think that's my mission, and every other person who's had a near-death experience, that's our goal. And whatever way we choose to deliver it, we've still all got the same message. But not only that, the main thing as well that we also like to deliver, all of us, I find, is that we're all loved, that it's not all about guilt and shame. It's not all about, if you carry on like this, you're going to hell, forget all that. It's just, God wants to give, and the universe wants to give us love and wants us to keep creating and keep moving forward. As I said earlier, we're part of the universe, and so it's all moving forward, and so are we.
Thank you. We're going to dive more into that in a little bit. I like to say, after you've had an NDE, I know no other way to put this, integration is a
Yes,
you're
yes.
still back in your body. You still
Yeah.
have your wiring. You still have your challenges and stuff. So challenge number one for you may have been, will people believe me? Because what you experienced was, to quote Dr. Eben Alexander of Proof of Heaven, realer than real.
Yes, exactly. That's what I call it. Ultra real is what I call it, and that it was a struggle. Yeah, I to be honest with you, I didn't really have any issues about telling people. It took me a week to tell my parents because they're both Christian, and I thought I wanted them to get it, and I thought with their faith they might not to. But they did. They loved it, But they listened to everything, and I told them in the hospital I was laid in this bed, And when I finished saying it, my mother turned around and said, "We know." And I said, "You know? How do you know?" She said, "David, every time we come in here, we walk out, and you've got all these tubes coming out of you, wires, but you're just glowing with this energy, and it's like something's happened, and we knew that there was a shift that had happened." And so that was amazing to hear them say that, So it's really beautiful. But I would say that the biggest challenge for me ultimately was came months afterwards, once I started getting back out into society, because I was still filled with all this love and all this energy, that I wasn't equipped to deal with the real world. When I say that, well, not the real world, society, I wasn't equipped for that. And so I suddenly found that I just didn't. I was going out there with a beautiful smile on my face, and I realised that no, that the rest of the world doesn't exist like that. There's it's. I'm not putting this over very well.
No, I get it. I get it.
You get it, yeah.
You both. This is going right back to the lamb to the slaughter here.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like it's like of course, yeah, it's a jungle out here. Of course, I forgot I'm supposed to keep competing with everybody. I forgot this is all very ego led, and yes, how do I do this again? So I'd lost my way on how to survive. Basically, yeah.
But there are a lot of signs and symbols and synchronicities and coincidences. I'm going to put them all in quotes because I don't believe in any coincidences at all. There's someone or many someone's pulling the strings on the marionette of our lives.
Yes.
But they seem to be pulling you toward a few tugs in your heart. The first, which began in the hospital, where you had this crazy urge, I believe, to start drawing and painting again. Well, not
Exactly.
painting for the first time, maybe, but drawing again.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Well, they'd given me a room of my own in the hospital, because of the severity of the accident. And I remember waking up after the first operation, which was like 8 hours long. And first of all, I was dealing with the accident. It was like, wow, what have I just been through, But ultimately, all I could think about was this whole experience, this whole spiritual awakening that I'd just been through. And I thought, how am I going to tell the world about this? Because I knew nothing about near-death experiences. I thought, I've got to find a way of making sure that I document this in case I forget it. Of course, I've never forgotten it, So I thought, I'm going to do a painting. And I thought it's going to be, going back to Michelangelo, it's going to be a big biblical scene like the Michelangelo paintings I could see in Rome, where they're very dramatic. And so I stuck to that. I thought, that's what I'm going to do. So as soon as I was well enough, once I was recovering at my sister's home, I said, look, can you get your hands on a big canvas for me, the biggest one you can get? And so we got one. And I remember it leaning against the wall. And yes, I was apprehensive at first about starting it, only because I didn't want to mess this up. I wanted to get this right. But there was, you say there's no such thing as coincidence, and I say that all the time. I agree with you, but I do believe there's also synchronicity, and
Yes.
I found that after my NDE, that was lots of synchronicity started to happen in my life, and one of those bits of synchronicity was that a friend of my sister's had come around to visit, and her and her husband run like a yoga Pilates center. And she said to me, "What's this canvas?" And I said, "Oh, I'm starting a painting." She said, "Well, listen, we've got a studio space going free for a week because we're decorating. You can start there." I said, "Great." So I started painting there, and of course I didn't finish it by the end of the week, but I ended up staying there for 2 years, completely free of charge. They're beautiful friends of mine now, of course. But they said, "No, we love having you here because people come in for the classes and everyone wants to come up and see what you're painting." And I realized at that point that when I started talking about, because all my paintings were about my experience, that everyone wanted to listen. Everyone's very fascinated. So this was the starting point of me communicating basically my story through my painting, but also through talking about it. Yeah.
One of the things that I teach, and I have a school of mystics, is the luminosity that is within, the light that is within each one of us. You were cracked open. You saw the light all around you, but also you saw that you are the light, that you are the universe, that you are the waterfall of stars. And when you came back, you didn't stop shining that light. So when people go upstairs, for instance, to see your painting, they
Yeah.
were going up to be illuminated by the sun that comes through you, that can come through all of us. But in your case, the layers were peeled away so that you're like, ah.
That's beautiful. That's really lovely put. Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you on that as well. That I think that people are drawn to. They were drawn to the purity of it, the honesty and the humbleness of the whole thing. Because what I realized is at that point is that none of us actually talk about death at all in Western civilization. We hardly broach it, which is kind of crazy because it's not like we need to talk about it all the time. But it's going to come to us all at some point. So we may as well we plan everything else in life, don't we? From getting married to our driving test. So I realized then that people were actually wanted to talk about death and wanted to talk about the afterlife and were curious. It had opened their own thoughts up, which I realized that a lot of people ultimately hide inside. Yeah.
And it also, when you come back from an experience like this, I know I moved too quickly after I came back from my first NDE. I had such an urge to share with people, such an urge to, instead of going to a place of peace and being, I went into, I must do. But when you have that weird, not sense of immortality, when you know that it is a doorway to another world, and you may be going through that doorway sooner than you anticipate, then there's a lot that you want
Yeah.
to get done here first. And I believe
Yeah.
that pull on our hearts we can actually learn from, because you learned, I need to share this story, I need to paint, not I'll wait 5 or 10 years and we'll get around to it. You felt,
Sure.
I get to do this now.
Yeah. Yeah. I was driven. I was driven, and I realized as soon as I started painting that it wasn't just me that was creating these paintings. I knew pretty much straight away that I was being helped by this other realm that I'd been to, that they were helping me to create these paintings, and I just couldn't stop. I was prolific. There was one after another, and I'd literally sit back, you know, in the studio and sit down in the chair and look up and go, wow, this is brilliant. This is amazing. I'd never had that feeling in my life. And it wasn't a sense of like ego, kind of like, wow, look what I've done. It's more like, what have they done? What have they helped me to create? And I was getting a crash course into painting and how to bring skin tones through, how to make things illuminate and colors. I was being brave. I was just doing crazy things like, I'd have skin tones and suddenly I just feel the urge to put some blue paint on there, and it's kind of, whoa, that works, So yeah, so yeah, I was being helped and still am. When you asked me earlier if I'm in touch with my guides and my angels, then that's very much when I know they're there. I don't ask for their help. They give it to me. I just know when they're helping me. I just know when I'm channeling and things are starting to come alive.
Thank you. So what do you share with people who are starting to feel the pull in their heart? They haven't had a near death experience, but you can sense there's a good chance they have guides around them as well that are going to help them through this if they step forward. What do you tell them to help
Yeah.
them to step forward?
The thing to do is to actually is not to force anything. I was going through my life before all the time trying to force things. As I say, I was trying to force myself into social circles that I aspired to that weren't meant for me. And I realize now that if you just step back and stop and just breathe and allow your inner self to come out, your authentic true heart to start speaking, then those doors will start to slowly open. You'll see them slowly opening, and then you'll find that you're on the right path, which is meant for you. It's almost like I look at my life now and I realize that I'm on this highway that I was constantly trying to get off, trying to take an alternative route to get me there quick. And forget all that. Just coast along steadily on the highway that is meant for you, and you'll realize that all these things will start to happen in your life. They will start to come to you. The synchronicity will start to happen. Yeah.
Thank you. Can you share then about the synchronicities that started to take place and an invitation that took place that had to be, I would think, rather scary for somebody who wasn't really making music? What was the next pull that started coming to your heart?
Yeah, music. That's it. That's absolutely right. Well, I was actually told I started going for spiritual healing. At this church I talked about earlier, they saw that I was in a pretty bad way and physically, and they said, "We do spiritual healing here. Would you be interested?" I said, "Yeah, great." So I went along and I went to this church and I was being healed. And some of the healers are clairvoyant, and they would give just very short messages. They'd be saying, I could see like a blue light coming through your chakras and stuff and what have you. But they started saying, why am I seeing a violin placed across your chest? Why am I hearing Beethoven and Wagner? And I'm going, I have no idea, because classical music was not part of my life. Mm-hmm. And then one of them turned around and said, they're telling me, that's when they say her guides or my guides, that you're going to write a piece of music about your experience. So I said, great. So I went home and I just got this old synthesizer, an old cheap thing out, and I just got that on a cassette recorder, and I started writing what I thought was going to be a song, but it wasn't coming out as a song. Nothing was happening. Then suddenly, this chord progression that I heard started coming together, and I thought, wow, that's beautiful. And I had that same feeling that with the paintings. I thought, wow, this is great. This is sounding fantastic, and it started developing. I thought this should be played by an orchestra, not a song for someone to sing. And again, synchronicity. One of the women who used to come in to see me on painting was a cellist. She played cello in the local orchestra, and we became friends. We met for coffee one morning. She said, "What's going on with you?" And I said, "Look, I've just I'm working on this piece of music." And I said, "But it's just developed." And I said, "It feels like it should be played by an orchestra." And she said, "Oh, well, maybe we could perform it one day," laughing, And that same ambition made me feel like, yeah, this could happen. So I just went away and really worked at it and developed it. And my brother gave me some software. He said, "Look, I've got this app that you can attach to your computer, and you need a new keyboard. But if you play the notes that you're playing that you're recording on your cassette recorder, it will convert it into notation, for the orchestra to read." So that's what I did. And I started hearing all these different instruments. I'd hear like horn sounds, and I started to realize what that sound was. It was a French horn and so on and so on. And I realized it was just like the painting, that I was channeling all these ideas through, and then suddenly it became a full symphony. And the orchestra said, "Right, we'll play it, we'll perform it." I think, great. So yeah, so it was that was crazy, because this was giving it was like a new dimension. The paintings were one dimension, and then now we've got sound coming out, and I thought all I could think of was not, this is me, great, I've written a symphony. I was thinking, brilliant, this is another way of people understanding what my experience was about, because the first piece that I wrote was called The Divine Light, and it's 3 movements all about the whole experience. And that concert sold out. It was amazing, because I was not only being helped now by my guides, with the actual creative side, but they were helping to make this whole thing come together. And the media was suddenly interested in me because they'd seen me on the news when I'd had the accident. They're going, "You're the guy who went under the train. You're going on the front page," And then the BBC came and interviewed me, at the rehearsal. So that was it. So it sold out. So the atmosphere of that premiere was just so beautiful. It was just like, you could not hear a pin drop when the baton came down on this first opening chords. And I can recommend that to anybody. It's a beautiful experience to have created something on a tiny little old synthesizer and hear it by a full orchestra.
It's beyond mind blowing. I cried. Everybody's going to want to get your book Shine On, and I cried at that point of reading your book. I do cry quite easily at this point, but I certainly cried. And there's a white dove, and it's such a sacred experience because it brought you back, and you managed in your book, in a sense, to bring us all there. I want to go back to the lioness because the amount, and if people can leave with this today, the amount of bravery and courage, things that a lion, a lioness possess. I mean, they call it a pride. To be proud enough and courageous enough to step forward. There's a difference between saying, I can kind of hear music. There's something in here too. Oh, maybe we could turn this into a symphony. Maybe we could do this. Maybe you could play this. And I'm crazy enough. And I'm using that crazy word very specifically because that crazy means I am magical enough and powerful enough to know I could birth this. It is mind-blowing that you didn't feel those pulls and go, not me, not now, don't have any idea, don't know what I'm doing. And you got chord progressions that probably didn't mean anything until you sewed this whole patchwork quilt together.
Totally, yeah, absolutely. I can still listen to that piece now, and it can bring myself to tears because I know that is all so much work that's coming from that other realm that's gone into that piece. And it makes me feel like honored, incredibly honored that I got so much help to go into creating that. And it's something else. I mean, of course, you don't come back superhuman from having a near-death experience. And I remember the very first rehearsal I went to, I was nervous. I was nervous because orchestras tend to be very highly educated, again, middle-class people. And I thought, my goodness, am I out of my depth here? Is this going to work? I had no idea whether it was going to work because I can't even read or write music, And I've since found out, that the conductor turned around to me and said, you must have written pieces yourself. He said, you're kidding. Writing a symphony, I wouldn't even go there. It's a big thing. It's a high core, but
they were intimidated by you.
Well, I wouldn't say they were intimidated by me, but what basically I felt was because the conductor asked me to step forward and talk about my piece, and I said no, that's okay, you guys, and he said no, come on. So, but once I started telling the story about the whole experience, it was just like being back at the studio. The whole orchestra were fascinated by the whole structure of what I was telling them, the whole story, and they were asking questions, and they wanted to know how they could play their instruments to give it as much sort of credit as that was due to it. So yeah, and I know that they gave their hearts that night. It was just like there was a standing ovation at the end. It was just I was sat with my family on the front row. We were given front row seats, and when it finished, my mother, again, she was in tears, but tears of joy this time, and she was saying that was just so beautiful, and we were hugging each other. And then my sister said, "David, look behind you," and there people just stood up and rose from their seats, and it's like, wow. And all I could feel. It's hard to say that no ego comes into this, but it's absolutely true that all I could feel was like, yeah, people connected, people understood that heavenly, beautiful light that I tried to depict through that music. It got to people because it touched their hearts. There's no way people would have risen from their seats if it hadn't. So yeah.
Does everybody have their own version of this music inside of them, and how do we help them bring it out?
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be music, but everybody's got something inside them which I called their true authentic self, which is what I've discovered, right? And you might suddenly you read stories about, these guys who, for example, they're working in finance, on Wall Street, then they suddenly turn around and say, you know what, I've had enough of this. And then they decide to go away and buy a farm, start farming, raising chickens or whatever, and they found their true authentic selves, that's what they've done. So we've all got that within us to find it, and we've all got hidden talents or hidden things that are buried because unfortunately, if I look back, I think for all of us that our lives are structured when we're kids, not so much by our parents and families, but by schools and stuff like that. People in authority are turning around and saying, you're no good at this, or do this, do that. There's no sense of like, hey, you've got a gift, I want to see it grow. Yes, sometimes some kids are given that opportunity to grow, but I think it's within us all to try and discover. If we look back at what's been happening over the past 18 months with the pandemic, we've had a chance to do that, especially at the beginning in the UK when we had our first lockdown. I loved the fact that people were suddenly, for the first time, I'd look out my window, people going out for walks with their kids and embracing nature like they'd never done before. People were like teaching their kids from home. People were painting and creating or making bread or cakes that they'd never cooked before in their lives. All those things are really, that's the true authentic self was coming out because we'd been given a moment to stop. The whole world has suddenly been knocked off kilter, and the whole world had just stopped, and we'd all been given an opportunity. But there's no reason why we can't continue to do that. We can find that space. That's what it's all about. It's trying not to race to get somewhere. It's like I always compare it to being like in a car at a traffic light. When you pull up to the traffic lights, if you hit a red light and you're late for a meeting, you go, no, it's time, the lights are on red. But you've got the option to turn around and say, you know what, the lights have just gone red, it means I'm going to be delayed by 1 minute, if that. I may as well just stop and go into myself and enjoy this one moment of time that the light is on red. That's the positive way of looking at it. I've been given a moment just to relax and look around and look at that beautiful bird there on the tree, and whatever, that's the way to try and view your life, is rather than keep thinking we've got to get from A to B as soon as we can. Just relax, we'll all get there,
We got stuck, in quotes, on the East Coast to a series of circumstances, and we had to leave our home due to forest fires last year. Repeated forest fires to our home in Colorado, and we were traveling, still are, sort of, kind of, in this beautiful Taj Mahal of an RV, and we ended up on the East Coast due to a series of circumstances, and found out we were pregnant. And everything was delayed for where we were supposed to be. We're supposed to be in Florida. Had we been down in Florida and forced our way down there, keyword is forced, we wouldn't have been here when we found out that our babies were very sick and been able to save one of our babies' lives. Instead, we were exactly at the right place at the right time by not forcing it. And my guess is that is a very powerful message of yours.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and I'm really glad that happened to you. That you were blessed with that. You were being guided, weren't you? You were being guided there. Yeah.
So, are we all being guided in each moment? And what do you think, if we were to think of this as Wizard of Oz, what's going on behind the curtain?
Well, the Wizard of Oz is a brilliant sort of scenario to look at, because when you're a kid, you're watching that film, you believe that the Wizard of Oz is just going to be like this great big, so whatever, and it's left to your own imagination to wonder who he or how he's going to look, and of course it is just a guy behind the curtain. But that's, to me, that sums it up brilliantly. There's no sort of like, it's like people say to me, I struggle to meditate. How do you do it? I can't meditate. Every time I try to meditate, nothing happens. And I said, well, that's because you're expecting too much. You've probably got it in your mind that meditation is just going to take you on this beautiful trip to, and somewhere else out of your body, and but it's not. It's meditation is just for example, or hypnosis is just something that's just will happen if you stop and allow it to overwhelm you and and not to be end gaining and thinking, oh, it's not happening. Just stop worrying about these things. Just to allow it to completely overtake you, as it were.
Thank you. That brings me to one last theme, and then I want to know where people can go to find your work and find your book. I can think of my times in London, very few, but I would always hear, mind the gap
Yes, yes,
with the
indeed.
tube. This wasn't
Yeah.
the tube, but you got sucked into the gap. You got
Mm,
sucked into the liminal space, in a sense, the space between two worlds.
yeah.
And it was the lioness that saved your life, but also what I believe is now one of your life's philosophies that
Mm.
we can all learn from. And what would you say is that?
Well, I would say that one of the main things that I learned from that moment, when I say the moment, is that when I was in that other realm, that time did not exist. You know, I'd spent so much time worrying about the past or worrying about the future. And I suddenly realized that what was I doing? I was spending far too much time doing that. And in that realm, all I was concerned with was that present moment. So that's what I brought back with me. And I think that's the most important thing for us all to do is to let go of the past. It doesn't exist anymore, it does, but somewhere else, but it doesn't belong to us. And the future doesn't exist. So start worrying about the future, where it's going to take us, because most of the time we conjure up far worse scenarios that actually happen. So try to live in the present moment. Try to just stop and be in the moment and enjoy the present moment, and accept it and realize that, say, for example, you just had a red letter come through the door. Say, well, you know what? It's okay. I'm all right. The fear element of what could happen next is far worse than me sitting here and looking around saying, I'm in my apartment. I'm still here. I'm okay. I've got my family with me. My cat's still here, and I'm just stroking. So what? That's fine.
Yeah.
So be in the moment. Just try and remain in the present moment. That's
Woohoo! Last thing, I'm hearing a whisper in my ear, and you don't have to go there if you don't want to, but you did pull off another miracle here. You're what was later classified as a functional alcoholic.
that's right. Yeah, yeah.
What was it, and where did that bravery come from to stop?
Well, it came from the realizing that it no longer belonged to me. I'd used alcohol as a function. Any adversity that came into my life, I would deal with that by just going straight to the local bar and just getting myself a drink and having one too many each time, and it took over my life. So of course I realize now that that didn't belong to me anymore, and I had to deal with it. I had to sort of, as I say, I didn't come back superhuman, so it wasn't like I was completely cured of alcoholism,
Right.
because I'm still I'm flesh and bones, and I was suffering from post-traumatic stress from the accident. I was dealing with a legal case, so there's a lot to deal with. So, but I knew I had to deal with it, so that's how I dealt with it. And it's like it sounds crazy, but it actually it clears your mind and it clears your soul. It just cleanses every single part of your whole aura, your whole being. Once you stop and you realize, wow, that was just poison that I was pouring into my system. So yeah, so again, that's one major thing that I overcame, and it's not easy, but it can be done. Yeah.
Thank you. Forgive me for an addendum to this question, but it's making me think of, yes, there was this whole legal proceeding for you, and I understand this very well at this point.
Yeah.
Um, how did you go to or remain in a state of love? Love toward whomever or whatever, and then love toward yourself, sort of like you're apologizing to your mom earlier. We had to get you to infuse yourself with that love which was being shown to you.
Mm. Well, I mean, basically, it, The with a legal case, yeah, it was like I said to you earlier. I'd come back and I was like kind of like this kind of almost like a child that was like an innocent child, and I was thrown into it. The whole legal system is it's an arena that is not very good. It's not it's it's pretty scary, and it's not exactly, and it's quite an aggressive one. And so for me, having to deal with that was very, very tough. But once that whole legal proceeding was over, that's when I was able to just say, right, now it's time for me to put that behind me and just focus on the beauty and the love that I've been given, and to continue on with my life without all that grey matter hanging over my head. I didn't even want the legal thing. I didn't even want anything to do with it. When it was completed, everyone was going, you must, celebrations. I was going, no, I don't feel any sense of celebration. All I can feel is, right, now I can start to live my life as I'm meant to live it, and that's just fueled with love.
Woohoo! So, where can people go to find out more, to find your beautiful book, Shine On, to find your music? And I'm very curious after that what's coming next. But first, where can people go?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess the good starting point is to go to my website, which is shineonthestory.com. So if people go there, you can stream the music. Actually, the first symphony that I've just been talking about, you can stream that for free. So there's 3 movements on there. Have a listen to that. You can see my paintings on there. And if you want to follow me on social media, then you can see more and more of what's going on as we go along. And so you'll find all those links on the website. And the book itself, which I've got here. So that's it. That's Shine On. This is actually the French edition. So it came out in France a few months back. So yeah, the French have signed it up. So
Très bien.
Yes, yeah, très bien. So Amazon, basically, wherever you are in the world, you'll be able to buy it on Amazon. So that's what I'd recommend. Just order it off Amazon, and you can get it. And I hope you enjoy it. It's just getting tremendous feedback, more than I could ever have wished for. People are really drawn into the whole story and the whole book. And I would say that it's not just about near-death experiences or the spiritual aspect. It's a journey, and so so please, yeah, if you feel like you'd like to go and explore more of my story, I hope you enjoy it. Yeah.
We learn from stories. We don't learn from the elders sitting around a campfire giving us a list of facts. And this, you did a brilliant job. I don't know how you had such a presence through this whole experience to remember such finite details, but you bring us there. You truly bring us through this whole thing, and you take us on what's most important, the arc. It's so many people. Well, that's you, Michael, or that's you, David. No, we get the full scope of the story. You don't really hold anything back. This isn't some special spiritual whatever who levitated the train above me.
Yeah. That's my intention. Well, actually, there was no intention. I just did it. That's how I did it. To me, it felt, just be real, just be honest, and give the whole story as it is. Because I'm finding that there are so many people who are just like me. Who've gone through life and they've struggled with addiction and stuff, and they turn around to me. People I've known as well who've kept it to themselves, and they said, "Look, you know what? It's great you opened up about that in the story about your addiction, because I had those issues as well." So so I like the fact that I'm getting that feedback as well as the spiritual aspect of it all, because it is spiritual. It's all part of it. It's like coming out of that darkness, and because so many of us need to come out of some kind of toxic sort of relationship with life. Yeah.
Last 2 questions for you. First off, what's pulling on your heart now?
Well, there's a couple of things. I'm actually working on putting I'm going to be releasing some music this year. So it's going to be it's going to be an album of all my different pieces of music. I'm working on a new symphony, and that'll be part of it. So that's the main creative force that's happening. But I'm also working with a team of script writers who've approached me, called the Mercury Sisters, and so we're working on a script idea because so many people have said this is screaming out for a movie or a Netflix, So so that would be wonderful. So that's where we're at, and that's really exciting. I'm enjoying that because, my input has been very visual, that I'm giving to them. They say, God, you've got so many visual ideas. And I said, that's because I'm dyslexic. So I never read books. I used to go to the movies and I saw so many movies. That was my way of reading a book, So for me, everything's very visual. So that's all going in there. So that's coming together beautifully. So those two projects are just kind of like, they're both having their own ripple, as it were, yeah.
Beautiful. And it's interesting because I look at all the different channels that reach out and whispered to me, and I'm curious if your guides are whispering to you on a daily basis. I was whispered to in so many different directions to have you on the show.
Oh, brilliant. Wow, that's great to hear.
So your message is making a difference. It is having an impact, and it is reaching farther than you could possibly imagine.
Fantastic. Oh, bless you. That's lovely. That's made the whole interview great. Because I've really enjoyed chatting with you. Yeah, it's been brilliant.
It goes both ways. So the last question I get to ask is, although I am curious, so I could put that out there as a part A, part B. Part A are how do you hear your guides, and then secondly, any last words of wisdom you want to share with people?
Well, it's I hear them by allowing them to come to me. It's a bit like a cat. That's how I always put it. It's like, you must know you've got cats. You must know that you never go to a cat and say, come here, you've got to allow the cat to come to you.
Yeah.
The cat has to come to you. They have to make their decision, their choices, and then they'll come to you if you allow it, and if they pick up on your energy, your vibration, then they'll be there. So it's a bit like that with my guides. Like I said to you, I never turn around, and even when I'm in, things are going terribly wrong, I don't go, please, I need your help now, come to me, I mean, don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid of when you're praying, if things are going wrong, of asking for help, that's cool, but ultimately when it comes to, say, for example, if I'm like this current piece of music I'm working on at the moment, I don't say, I need help, I'm stuck on this part here, it's not moving forward. I just know that they come to me. It's almost like they know that I need. They'll shift me and they go, "You need to go this way, David. You need to take it along." And I'm like, it was there right in front of me. Why didn't I see it? So yeah, I kind of. That's how I hear them. That's how I hear them through my creativity. But believe you me, we've all got our guides. What I realized was that the healers that I talked about in my near-death experience, they've been with me all of my life throughout, and I just didn't know it because I was too busy following the ego trip. And when I say the ego trip, the ego life, the ego fed life, and they've been with me all along. So we've all got our guides. We've all got our personal angels who want to help us, and so we've just got to allow them in and try to make some kind of contact with them if you can. Yeah.
Do they have a message for us?
Yeah. Then the message is that you're loved, that you are love, that you are loved, that you are light, and you're all part of this beautiful universe. Just like, look out of your window and look at the birds sort of migrating in the sky. Look at the animals in the fields and look how they all connect. They're all in touch with the universal energy, and and that's how they plan their mating seasons and everything. Unlike us, we've become so ego led. When I say ego, I use that word. I don't mean it in a sense of egotistical. What I mean is we forget that we're animals, basically. We forget that we're part of the animal kingdom. So try to remember that we are, and try to allow, if you're feeling tired, for example, in the winter, don't say, oh, I've overslept yet again. Just say, no, actually, I'm an animal. That's what animals do. They sleep, they kind of gain their energy back, and stuff. So try to do that, and allow that love to come through, because you are even when you're going through the darkest moments, and you've got to realize that generally speaking, and especially in my case, I look at my own life, that because I was failing so much at school. When I say failing, there you go. I was told that I was failing, but I wasn't. I was dyslexic, so I was struggling. I actually wanted to learn. I wanted to learn everything, but I just couldn't get it, And so try and realize we've all got those stories. We can all look back over our lives and think, hang on a sec, that person, that adult was telling me as a child that I'm no good, but maybe I am. Maybe I'm okay. Maybe I'm loved, and we are loved underneath all those layers.
Woohoo!
Whoa.
Any last words of wisdom, or did I just get them?
Well, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that's it. Just keep on realizing that your guides are there, and they want you to succeed. The universe wants you to create. The universe wants us all to create, and just to keep moving forward with our lives, and have faith as well. Especially at the moment with what's going on. There's a lot of uncertainty in the world. It's like a pendulum shifting. That pendulum's taken a massive swing, and it's frightened us all. But it will sway back, and things are going to be a lot better. They're going to be a lot. I believe that we're moving into a whole new era now. We're not going back to normal. Forget all that. We're moving into a new era. So just have faith that this new era that we're moving to is going to be a lot more spiritual bound as well. It's going to be. I've got a lot of faith in the next generation who are coming through. Young adults. I connect with them. I chat with them. I think, wow, you're great. You're far more tuned in than what we were when we were younger. So. Have faith. It's all going to be good. It's going to come clean.
I feel like I'm hearing me, because I see us all on this spiraling ascension upwards. There's no way you can convince me otherwise. The evolution of the universe is always upwards, and that pause that we got at the beginning of COVID, I believe that's why we're hitting this other wave now, is universe was waking us up to go back inward and not to forget that. And so after everything unlocked and everybody started to forget, I think we're being shown it again for our highest good. And youth today, they're plugged in, or to use the term in the Matrix, they're jacked in.
Yeah, right,
They get it. They look at us. I mean, us as older folk compared to them as completely insane, because they see the world completely differently.
Yeah. No, it is going to be good. I mean, I felt that right from the start. As soon as this whole thing happened, it was like, oh wow, this is like really interesting what's going on here. And I've never lost faith in that. I've never felt fear of where we're all going. But so yeah, it's going to be good.
So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get shine on, and begin discovering that authentic self and light within you today. And above and beyond all else, as David would say too, shine bright. Woohoo! Brilliant show with a brilliant, bright, and shining beacon of light. A bright and shiny light bulb of light, beacon of light. We'll go with beacon. What a brilliant show with a bright and shiny beacon of light, David Ditchfield. On that note, if you want to plug into your guides, if you want to connect with the other side, the way Rue is, well, actually a little bit differently than that. I have the book behind me. I can't reach it with Rue in my arms, which is automatic writing. Oh, I know. You just stepped up on my lap, which means you are about to try and fly out of my arms. And with this cord beneath you, it could be kind of interesting, because you're waking up and you're going, yum, 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 yum. So check out our brilliant book, Awe, the Automatic Writing Experience, where you can learn how to connect with your guides. Of course, we have the Mystic Circle. Just click the join button below for lots of behind-the-scenes video. We have our School of Mystics, 4 Wednesdays a month. And I have the link right at the top of the comments, pinned right at the top of the comments, to join us for your School of Mystics, where you can learn how to become the mystic you were always meant to be. Please do give this a big thumbs up, share it with everybody you know, like it, like it, like it, love it, love it, love it. What do you think? Oh yeah. For the next amazing video, click here, or are you pointing over there? Click here, click there. Inspire Nation is also a podcast. You can listen to me and Rue on iTunes, on Spotify, on whatever your favorite podcast consumption channel is. So when you're running, when you're riding, when you're driving down the road, you can be listening to us. Here's the link for the next amazing video. Here's the link for the next amazing video. Love you guys so, so much. Keep on shining bright. Right, Rue? Now he's quiet. Woohoo! Oh, I love you, Rue.